Hi there, beautiful people. Oh, it's almost the summer solstice, and what a wonderful time of the year. I'm so grateful that you're here and that we get to spend time together in this way. It's really an honor. It's really a privilege. And, so 25 years ago today, I was sitting in a Zen temple meditating with the monks, right? And it was at that time I had just turned 21. So technically tomorrow is my birthday. So 25 years ago tomorrow. But the point is, I'm meditating with the monks. I'm 21 years old. And I get introduced to this concept of the Bodhisattva Vow. And it's kind of a long vow, but essentially it's a vow that Buddhists take that they will not achieve enlightenment or ascension until all sentient beings have been enlightened or have ascended as well. And when I was introduced to that concept, I was like, no thank you. I mean, I'm not that much of a team player. I mean, I can do my own thing. I can walk in my own path and my own spiritual journey, but I can't take on the pressure of like all sentient beings, their liberation. That's just way too much pressure. That's unrealistic, and that's not even on my radar. I'm going to sit and meditate for my own happiness, my own well-being, my own path. And so today's episode of Apothecary Wisdom, I'm going to talk to you about my understanding of what the Bodhisattva Vow means to me now, 25 years later. And I want to talk about the solstice and share a lot of my tips and insights on how to be fully present and engaged in the solstice and how to navigate through the solstice, because the solstice is a time of extreme amounts of energy. And if this is the first time we're meeting, my name is Maria Chaudhry. I'm a midwife and an herbalist and a Qigong practitioner and the creator of Birthsong Botanicals. And we make nourishing herbal remedies for women and children. And if you want to learn more about our herbs and our products and our resources and our blogs and all of our ways that we serve the community, you can go to birthsongbotanicals.com. And if you want to learn more about Qigong, which I'm going to talk a lot about today, then you can go to pathwithharmony.com. And this is a live video, so I'm in front of the camera and Heaven's behind the camera. And so I encourage you to push like and subscribe and heart and flower and all the cute little things and share your insights in the comments. I'm just not going to see them right away. And when there's a pause and if it seems appropriate, Heaven will chime in. If not, we'll talk about them at the end. Okay? So, and also want to seize your moment, because right now you want to be more spontaneous than you have been. So be spontaneous and push like and subscribe. You know you want to. I want you to. You want to. It's a win-win. Okay, let's get started. Okay, the solstice is, for me, one of the most important times of the year on a personal level. And so I feel so strongly and so compelled to share with you my experience of what I feel like is happening in our collective consciousness, and then what's happening for me, and also to explain to you why it's so important to me personally. But before we get there, I want to remember 6 months ago I made another video about the winter solstice. And in the winter solstice in December, so we planted those seeds in December, and now we're cultivating and receiving the fruit of those seeds, of those intentions now. And in December and in the winter, in the extreme yin, we explored the cold and the dark and the yin, and we went into those dark, cold, scary places, right? And we acknowledged who we are and who we're becoming. And we acknowledged our ancestors and our lineage. And we acknowledged that we're on the forefront of our destiny, and the part of our destiny that's unseen and unknown in unprecedented times. We also acknowledged going into those deep, dark, scary places. When we went into those places on purpose, what we found actually was beauty and light. We found the lost parts of ourselves. We found our hidden talents, our hidden abilities. We reconnected with people that mean so much to us. And then we brought those talents and that light and that beauty, and we brought it out of the darkness, and we revealed it, and we shared it within our strength and our vulnerabilities, and we shared it with the world. And that's what we did in December. And so now here we are in June, 6 months later. And the summer solstice is all about fire and heat and hot, and it's extreme yang, and it's bright, right? It's like so bright, it feels like the light is like catching us, right? It's almost like a deer with this light, the headlights come on and the deer like gets caught in the headlights, it's caught there. Or almost like it feels a little extreme, but this is extreme yang. It's a lot like an interrogation light on you, a spotlight on you, and everything is now being exposed and revealed, right? And what's happening is this light is exposing the hidden things in us that are the stark truth. It's the stark truth of our personalities and of our belief systems and of our culture and of our governments and of our lives that we really would rather not look at, that we would really pretend that don't exist. Now those stark truths are rearing their head and they're directly in our face, and we can no longer ignore them. That's what's happening. So in one way, like from a society level, just to explain just a few things that happened just this week, right? On a society level, we're experiencing and realizing and seeing the cruelty of systemic racism. We're seeing riots, we're seeing lynchings, we're seeing hangings, we're burning flags, we're tearing down statues, right? There's no longer this blurry line, right? And what's happening is so clear and so apparent. The only reason if we don't see it is because we're choosing to not look at it. Is the only reason we can't see it. So in a sense, if we were to just distill it down, the frightening darkness, when you lean into the frightening darkness, what actually happens is you find beauty. That's what's revealed. When you go into the revered, beautiful, sacred, bright light, what's happening, what's revealed is the stark, harsh truth. And so in some of my recent videos, if you watch my videos, which I hope you do, and since you're on here, that means you do, I'm thankful for that, but you've been hearing me talk about, we've been going through the springtime, and so I've been talking about, wow, the spring is so beautiful. The spring and this new life and this freshness and the softness is a buffer. And since it's so beautiful and so fresh and so hopeful and so tender and gorgeous, and everywhere we look, we're surrounded by moments that make us go, oh my gosh, then it's the perfect time to let that beauty be the backdrop, to be the buffer for these really more painful conversations that are related to midwifery and birth and mothering. And so in the midst of spring, instead of talking about a lot of fun, really joyful, cute things that I could have been talking about, I started talking about really a lot more heavy, intense things because we had that soft buffer. And, so now we're moving from that springtime into the summer. Summer's just starting, so we're not really there yet, but that's what's coming, right? And so the heat of the summer, the fire of the summer is going to burn away that soft buffer, right? And so there's no longer, like currently, there's no longer little sweet, pink, beautiful peony flowers laying on the pathway as I walk up, right? Yes, there is still beautiful flowers. There's these bright orange cosmo flowers blooming right now. There's orange everywhere. It's really uplifting. But unless I water that garden, unless I tend to it on purpose, it'll all just become hard and dry and brittle and growing with a bunch of thorns. That's the natural process of summer, right? And so, irregardless of the beautiful soft buffer of spring, whether it's there or not, we still need to be having these conversations. And we still need to come face to face with ourselves and with our truth and with each other. Okay? And so part of these truths and part of this conversation that's important is talking about our fathers, because along with the summer solstice comes Father's Day, which is entirely appropriate from the yang perspective, right? And just last week I made a super sweet video about fathers and papas and how wonderful they are and how to include them into our lives and how to understand men better and communicate and how to speak our love languages and share our love languages together. And I ended that video with talking about forgiveness. And so I encourage you to watch the video. There'll be a link in the description where if you want to learn to communicate more and learn more about the love languages. But I want to go a little bit deeper and talk about fathers today, because for me it's an important process to talk about, because my birthday is tomorrow, June 19th, and then the following day is the solstice, and then the following day is Father's Day, and then the following day is the anniversary of my dad's death. And my birthday oftentimes falls on Father's Day. And I grew up without my dad. Like, I grew up without biological dad being very active in my life. And I remember being a little girl being like, man, I wonder if my dad's gonna like give me something for my birthday. Or, ooh, is my dad gonna like show up? Ooh, what if I get a dad for my birthday? Like, oh, they have a dad. Anyway, so that's a thing, right? That's a theme. And we're talking about stark truths that are revealing themselves. So for me, this is a stark truth. My dad wasn't in my life when I was growing up. Later, when I became a little bit older, I did have a stepdad. And he came into my life. And that was probably the most transformative relationships that I've ever experienced. And when I'm talking about the memory of my dad's passing away, I'm talking about my stepdad. But so all within a 4-day period, starting tomorrow, are those days for me. And what I want to talk about also is, in our culture, one of the stark truths that's happening and through our history is how we've been really dominated by patriarchy, right? And how patriarchy has dominated our society. And just thinking about from a woman's perspective, like, how many women right now are trying their hardest to earn respect and earn the attention of a man? And how many women right now are in relationships with emotionally unavailable men? Or they're not there. They could be available, but for whatever reason, they're not really there right now, right? And how many of us have felt abandoned by our fathers? And how many children have felt abandoned by their fathers? And how many children and young boys have grown up wondering if they could ever live up to their father's expectations that they have put on them? And then when we talk about father, it's immediately, that word father is immediately associated with our heavenly Father, with God. And have you ever heard, Father, why have you forsaken me? Father, don't abandon me. Father, please forgive them. Please forgive me. So there is your Father, and then there's the heavenly Father that's always watching, which is very loving and very compassionate and also always watching, right? And then what about the fathers of our nation, right? When you think about the fathers of our nation, we think about our presidents, we think about political leaders, religious leaders, spiritual leaders. Those are all fathers, right? And how often have we been let down by their lack of integrity and their lack of empathy and their lack of respect over the people that they're controlling? And they have blatantly misused and abused their power, right? And so patriarchy is what's happening right now. It's a system that's being played out in our society, right? And it's in the United States, but all over the world. And patriarchy and supremacy are systems and are structures that have been developed and have been built to control and dominate the citizens, right? And right now, to me, it appears that some of these systems are being really exposed for what they are, and they're being dismantled, right? Ideally, they'll be reconstructed and recreated in a way that's more equitable and more fair. Equitable and fair mean the same thing, but that are more inclusive to the people and to the planet and to the animals, right? And the only way that that can happen is for us to be involved, for us to be fully present and co-creators in the new society and the new humanity, right? That's the only way that can happen. So we need to be active participants in creating new systems that include positive, powerful, strong structures of men and masculinity and femininity that include them both, but not patriarchy or matriarchy. Both of those are too extreme. And so in order for us to create and rebuild this new humanity, we need to have forgiveness and we need to have understanding. And so on a personal level, I'm learning so much about forgiveness and understanding and forgiving my father. And it feels so good and freeing and relieving to not carry the burden of anger and of disappointment on something that happened a long time ago. I'm not bothered. I mean, I really feel like I'm going through, really releasing the layers of loving and forgiving and understanding and not being so upset about it. And it feels good. It feels good. And so, but a valuable insight came to me just as I was preparing for this talk of I've always been forgiving the past. And right now, I'm talking about something a little bit more radical. We need to forgive the present. My father's not here presently, but patriarchy and fathers and all these things I'm talking about. We need to forgive the present and we need to forgive the future. Because what we're doing right now, all our decisions and our actions that we're taking, we're making decisions that affect the next 7 generations, right? And if you think about it, I've been talking about all the stuff that's going on. And only 3 generations ago, that means our grandparents' parents, so our great-grandparents, 3 generations ago, some of us were born as slaves. Some of us were born as slave owners. And when you think about it as your grandparents' mom, your grandma's mom, you're like, well, that's not that long ago. That's real close. So you can see it's really still alive, still really ever present. That's why we have to forgive right now and understand right now. And we also have to understand the future because we're working on healing this paradigm. And that's essentially the work we're doing right now. We're essentially doing the work of rebuilding new systems, forgiving and understanding the past, present, and the future. I'm going to talk more about the future in just a second. So the solstice, this is all about the solstice. But along with the summer solstice right now, I'm not an astrologer. I don't know all the planetary alignments and stuff, but Mars is present. And we also have all these interesting planetary alignments. And we're entering into this eclipse season. So, when you have a lot of Mars present, you have anger, you have resentment, you have abandonment, and all of those things are being triggered right now. And it's also being triggered because of the extreme yang, because of the heat and the fire. And it's being triggered because of patriarchy and Father's Day and all those things. That's just what's happening. That's the climate. That's the terrain we're in. And so Mars is the ruler of war, right? He's the ruler of conflict, of finances, and the ruler of us versus them mentality. And Mars is really angry. And a lot of that anger is irrational rage. And a lot of that anger is righteous rage, right? The anger is real, and it's deep-seated from us, from our whole lives. And what's happening right now is the anger is being revealed, and it's being acted upon. And so the solstice can either burn it away and clear it away, or it can amplify it like a spark that triggers it into a wildfire. So how we respond to the anger in our lives right now is of extreme importance, and it's paramount how we respond. Because if we allow our uncontrolled anger to lash out, it can leave lasting and damaging consequences for generations to come. I grew up in Northern California, and it's very well known to a person in Northern California how much one tiny spark can burn an entire forest and an entire community quickly. Our actions right now matter so much. And it's really important to note that the anger that we're feeling right now, and the thing that's triggering you right now, the thing that's triggering you right now is not really what you're angry about, at least from my perspective. What you're angry about is from an old past experience of a repressed feeling of feeling powerless. We started feeling powerless when we were a child before we could ever talk. We can all remember a time, multiple times, when everything around you is outside and beyond your control. And this is a generational anger. This anger comes from your grandparents and their ancestors, and this is an anger from our future generations, because when our future generations, our descendants, are looking back at us and wanting and expecting and hoping that we make wise and discerned decisions. Because just like how we stand right now and we look back at our past and we say, how could you let so many people die in those concentration camps? And then when we look around and we're like, oh, well, we have thousands of people in detention centers right now and we're not doing anything about it. That's how it happens. And so our descendants are looking at us wondering, what are you about to do? So it's important what we do, right? Okay, so ultimately it doesn't matter how we were raised. It doesn't matter who our parents are or what our childhood is like. Ultimately, we're adults, and it's our personal responsibility to take charge of how we feel and how we behave. And now we have the opportunity, now that we're adults, right? And we're so wise, we know so much now. We can parent ourselves. We can meet those needs of our inner child that feels lost, angry, and abandoned. We can provide that lost child with what it needs now, right? And so to effectively clear this type of anger that I'm talking about, this generational anger and this rage, we have to go back into our memories of the first time we've ever felt that way and start to meet the needs of that child in that moment. And in order to know how to do those techniques, I lined those out in a previous video called How to Navigate Through Intense Emotions During a Pandemic. And so watch that video, and there's all the steps how to go through and clear this type of generational rage. Also right now with the solstice and this bright light, right? It's time for us to stand in our integrity. It's time for us to stand up and stand for what we believe in. And now is the time for us to stop lying to ourselves and stop lying to others. And besides, the people that we love, they can see right through us, right? And with this bright light that's cast on us, I mean, the truth is there's nowhere for us to run, and there's nowhere for us to hide from the truth. And in one way that sounds really freeing, like, wow, there's nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, let's just be in the truth. But what happens, what it feels like, at least in my body, is it triggers a stressful, sympathetic state that is called fight, flight, or freeze. And I always thought that I was a fighter. I'm like, I'm a fighter. I want to stand up. But the truth is, when I self-evaluate, I freeze and I hide. And that's why these conversations are so important for me, because I can't hide, right? The other thing that's important with this whole solstice and planetary alignment and Mars energy and where we are on the calendar is it's time to choose, right? And it's not some either or black and white issue, but at the same time, I feel very strongly about this in my own personal life. It's time to commit and or to recommit to things, or it's time to let some commitments go, right? And so it's time for us to really step into and stand up for what our soul is calling us to do, for the life we're being called to be and the person we're called to be and to live. And so I really encourage you to ask yourself, what are your commitments that you feel committed to now? What needs to be reevaluated? What do you need to recommit to or let go of? And I'll tell you the story. This is not on my notes here. This morning I was asking myself, what am I committing to? And I have 3 things that I'm committing to, essentially. Within each thing, there's the broad title, and then with each thing there's a lot that goes underneath it. But I'm committing to the well-being of my family, and I'm committing to birth song, which carries on the nourishing traditions of midwives and herbalists, right? And I'm committing to my Qigong practice, to going deeper and learning more and sharing and continuing that, right? But this morning when I said to myself, what am I committing to? And I said, I'm committing to my family. I felt this like intense pain in my chest, as if like I was like stabbed in my chest, and like I still kind of feel it. That was hours ago. And I'm like, can't my insights just be like in my mind? Like, can't they just be ideals? And the answer to that is no. You have to fully embody them, fully live them, take them on, wear them, be them. That's the answer. I still feel it. My chest hurts. Okay. So solstice and Mars. Another thing that's really important about Mars and solstice is like finances and your investments. So our financial stability and our emotional stability and our issues around money are all being brought up and brought to light right now. And so money issues are being triggered big time right now. We have COVID, right? And we also have a lot of uprisings, and all these systems are being dismantled, right? And so there's a lot of uncertainty, and people have lost their jobs, and people's businesses have closed down, right? And then like people are concerned and like lost their investments in the stock market. The stock market's falling. And so we have to remember that money is energy, and our relationship to money is a learned behavior. And we learned our behavior of money in a couple of different areas, but primarily through our parenting, right? And how we've been parented. And so the question that I'm asking myself is about money, but it's more about investments. So what is it, and it's related to my commitments, what is it that I'm investing in? And what is it that I have to invest, right? And what are the risks associated? So like, if I'm going to invest, what is my like anticipated gain? Like, what am I'm going to invest in you, invest in this, what do I get out of it, essentially? And then what's the risk? What's the risk if I don't invest? What's the risk if I do invest? Ultimately, I'm asking, what is this costing me? Is this costing me my time? Is this costing me my energy? Is this costing me my business? Is this costing me my family? Is this costing me my reputation? Is this costing me my integrity? Is this costing me my happiness? What is this costing me? Ask yourself these questions. And it's really essential right now to clarify these commitments, and you want to clarify your commitments, you want to clarify your investments, and you want to clarify your risk, because right now we have the solstice, right? We have a lot of energy. We feel big, we feel strong, we feel bold, we feel expanded, we feel clear, we feel like we know we've made it to the top, we're at the apex, right? We can see. So now is the time to see what's on the table, right? And at the same time, we're in the eclipse season. So you have the clarity, and then you're in the eclipse season. So immediately after the clarity, you get uncertain. You get confused. You get like unsure again. Everything's shifting, right? It's the eclipse. And so it's super essential when you have the clarity of what you're going to commit to. You don't have to commit for your life. It's like commit for like right now, commit for today, commit for the next 6 months. You find your time frame. But when you have that clarity and then you can anchor into those commitments, then they become guiding principles, because really soon we're going to be lost and confused and scared and not know what to do. And then you're wandering around and you're wasting all your time and wasting all your energy. So when you have your commitments, you have a framework in which you can function, and that it'll be clear enough to guide you to the next step. Okay? And so in part of the commitments, one of my commitments, and another thing that I'm suggesting and talking about in this whole solstice conversation, is the art of peace, right? Because I've been talking about this whole challenging time about the generational patterns and our own personal patterns that are being revealed, and in our human consciousness and our own personal lives, all these things keep popping up again and again. Our issues with money, our issues with abandonment, our issues with anger, our issues with whatever keeps popping up for you, right? That's a pattern. And so, and just on the big level, like I talked about, the supremacy and the racism and the history of all that. So we have this Mars energy, this strong, this fighter energy, and we have this solstice energy, this clear, young, powerful, strong, masculine energy, right? And so we have the clarity, and we have the impulse, and we have the drive to stand up and do something and make it happen right now, and to fix it right now, like we want to do something right now. But because of the eclipses and because Mars' irrational tendencies, it has a tendency to be out of control, it's not the time really right now to lash out and just try to fix something, right? So instead, it's time to practice the art of peace, right? The art of peace is not doing anything. The art of peace is not just waiting to see what happens. The art of peace is not just waiting until things get back to normal and then we'll figure it out, right? The art of peace is a very deliberate action. It is deliberate action and deliberate non-action. It's making mindful commitments, and it's dedicating yourself. It's dedicating yourself to profound listening, to following, to adhering, to understanding, right? It's to dedicating yourself to observation, to integration, to healing, to love. A skillful practitioner in the art of peace does not react. Instead, they respond, they anticipate, and they apologize. And so there's some tips for the solstice. I have a few tips for you. So on one hand, like I said, we have the clarity of the solstice, and we can see our next steps, and we have the motivation to act. And then on the other hand, we have the eclipse, and we have the self-doubt, and we have the confusion and the uncertainty. But remember, we have the capacity to hold the paradox. We have the capacity to hold it all. And so my first and number one tip is to harmonize with water, right? To harmonize with water will help balance out some of this fire energy. We need water. And because we're in eclipses, that by nature says that the eclipse is tied to the moon, and the moon is tied to the ocean, and the ocean is tied to our menstrual cycles, and it's tied to the tide and to the ebb and flow, right? And so it's summertime. Normally, traditionally, if we weren't in isolation and COVID, we would be out at the river, we'd be at the beach, we'd be at the lake, right? We'd be touching people and seeing people, and we'd be connecting. But we're not doing that very much right now. So we need to find water, we need to drink water. And right now, I'm talking about anger, but we're feeling so many emotions. And our tears are just beneath the surface, right? Just beneath the surface. And they can come bursting forth at any moment. And so we need to let them come, invite them to come to bathe you and to wash you, and baptize you, recalibrate you. Because in your tears, there's so much medicine and information for your healing, for this process of this revealing that you're going through. So drink a lot of water, and put a pinch of Himalayan mountain salt, or put a pinch of sea salt into your water, because we're sweating a lot, and it'll help with your electrolytes and your minerals. And in water, like, get into the pool, get into the creek. As soon as you see that summer rain, run out and dance in that rain. Get in the rain. I did that the other day. Oh my gosh, it was awesome. But also in terms of water, you can take an alchemy bath. I'm calling it an alchemy bath because I like that word. But also because it nourishes you and it purifies you. So it does two things. So it's the soothing herb bath. And why I'm suggesting this bath in particular is because the Epsom salts are high in magnesium, high in minerals. And we need these minerals when we're really stressed out, right? The minerals help feed us and help us relax. And the baking soda helps purify and detoxify our system, right? Especially when we're dealing with so many emotions and rage and anger and abandonment and grief and all this stuff. And fear, I haven't even talked about fear, all that stuff, it leaves chemicals and residue in our body, and it needs to be purified. And the rosemary in this bath is all about remembering. We're remembering our deep ancestral wounds, right? We're remembering the things that have happened to our grandparents. We're going back into our past, and we're putting pieces together so we can integrate and unify with them, so we can heal. Rosemary helps us remember. And then the St. John's wort helps with pain. We have so much pain in our bodies and our hearts and our minds and our souls. There's lots of pain. People are hurting, right? St. John's wort helps soothe and ease the pain that you might be feeling. And lavender is an act of self-love and self-care. And lavender helps relax you and helps put you in a parasympathetic state. And when you can get into a parasympathetic state and a relaxed state, you can heal, right? And then what else? Ceremonial white sage is a sacred plant, and it's a healing plant, it's a protective plant. It helps you protect your energy. You're going through so much that you're being you're processing, you're being exposed, you're revealing, you're crying, you're angry, you're trying to pull it together, you're having to protect yourself from the energy, protect yourself from the virus, protect yourself from all these things. And so sage kind of like wraps around you and purifies you and holds you and protects you in a holy, sacred container. And I get it, it's hot outside, and taking a bath is not the easiest thing. It's not easy to always get in the tub or clean the tub and all the stuff. So you can do what I've been doing. You can do a foot bath, but I haven't even been doing that. What I've been doing is I'm making a small amount of the bath, and I've been putting my washcloth in it, and then I'm just washing myself with the herbs. And it's kind of nice because it's hot, so it feels cool and refreshing. And then you can take those herbs and those herbal compresses, and since it's good for pain, you can rest it on your legs or your back or your hips or your feet or your mind, wherever you need it, right? You can lay that washcloth there on your heart. And so also, solid and serene, I'm just going to briefly mention, sometimes if you're feeling stressed out and overwhelmed and anxious and angry and just jacked up and stirred up, and you need to just like pull it together right now, obviously you're going to want to take some deep breaths, but a few drops of solid and serene can really help just bring you down in that moment, pull you back to your center, so that you can like keep driving in traffic and keep doing what you're doing at work, and you don't get to go take a herb bath when you're at work, right? But so you can have something in your pocket that can help you. Okay? So some other tips are to sunbathe and get out there and get naked. Lay out there and get naked and let the early morning light or the evening light bathe you. Touch the areas of your body that haven't been exposed to the sunlight in a long time, to those tender little pale places. Bring some sunlight to those places, right? And those other things are easier to do than this last one, or this next one, is to manage your anger. So manage your anger, guys. But in order to manage our anger, there's some things we can do. Like some people, they want to yell, and so you can yell into a pillow. And some people just have like so much energy in their body, they just need to get the energy out of their body. So you can run and do push-ups and do sit-ups and do jumping jacks or burpees or something like that, or kick the bag. My son's got a punching bag, and he punches and kicks the bag all the time. And that's a good way to discharge energy. But I do want to say something about that. When you're really amplified and you're jacked up and you're doing something that creates more energy, that keeps you in that stress state, that keeps you in that sympathetic state, and it doesn't necessarily help you enter as quickly into the parasympathetic state. So I encourage you to do those things at first, to just like, if you feel like it in your body, to just discharge, take a run, take a walk. But then ultimately, really, this is what I'm suggesting, because you'll do those things anyways. You might not do what I'm suggesting until you hear it. So I'm suggesting it is for you to try to do something very, very, very slowly, like something slow and calm and concentrated that requires you to coordinate your breath with your movement. Something like Qigong, right? Because Qigong, I keep using this word, but Qigong puts you very quickly into a parasympathetic state where you can relax your body. And it puts you in a state where you can be alert and engaged, and at the same time deeply and profoundly relaxed and calm. Like I've said before, we cannot heal our mind, we cannot heal our spirit, our body, our thoughts, our souls, if we're in a tensed and stressed out state. This is not possible. Okay, so a beauty of Qigong is that it helps you and helps the energy flow like water. In our body, we have channels of energy. It's almost like rivers of light. Like we have our circulatory system, and you can see it branching out. And you have our nervous system, you see it branching out. And our qi travels in our nervous system, and it travels in our circulatory system, and it travels along these energy pathways that are like rivers of light. And qi flows like water, right? And so when we're in a tense place, it's like creating a dam, right? It can't flow, the qi can't flow to my fingertips if there's something blocking it. So then when we can relax the tension, then the qi can flow. And when the qi can flow, we can move through that experience that's triggering you. You can move through that anger or that abandonment. You can get insights and understanding. Not just like getting through it just so you can be done with it, but you can move through it to a place where you can really process it and integrate it, and where it becomes something that's a part of you but not a trigger of you anymore. And so some of the beauties of Qigong is there's so many different types and styles of Qigong. And since we're talking about the summer solstice, I'm going to talk about one style in particular. It's called 4 Seasons Qigong. And so what that means is every season there is a particular set of movements. There's a particular set of breath sounds, breathing patterns. There's a particular set of colors, types of foods. There are organs that are associated and animals that are associated. there are several layers of subtle layers of nuances for each season so that we can be really balanced and move gracefully throughout our lives. I made a video about that called Women's Balance, and what I talked about is balance really is understanding and being in right relation with the season of life that you're in. And right now, in terms of the seasons of nature, we're in the extreme yang summer season. And so from Four Seasons Qigong perspective, this is the season of the heart. This is the element of fire. This is the color red, right? In the animals, this is the monkey. They're like, they make funny sounds, right? It's the emotion of joy, even though I'm talking about all this anger, right? And so there are practices that you can do to help bring joy and to help you harmonize with the intensity of what's happening with you right now. And that's Four Seasons Qigong and the summer set. So tomorrow, well, if you're watching this later, but every Friday, and specifically tomorrow on my birthday, I'll be doing a special Four Seasons Qigong for the Summer Solstice. I know Summer Solstice is on the day after, and it's going to be to harmonize your heart energy. It's a beautiful, eloquent, simple yet subtle form where you can take it deep into several layers of nuance, or you can learn it in a moment and have it in your toolkit so that you can practice and have a form that you feel that helps ground you into your reality and helps ground you in your commitments and helps you embody that commitment and help embody what you're standing for and what you're believing in, and it helps you expand and reach out and get a new perspective, a bigger and larger perspective, because Qigong also talks a lot about, like, we're a human, right? Within our human body, we're a small little micro universe. So we're called microcosmic. And then we're a part of this larger universe, which is called macrocosmic, right? And humans are the intermediary between our feet are standing on the earth and our head and hands are touching the heavens. So we're the intermediary between heaven and earth. And with our microcosmic breath, we can connect with the heavens and the earth and bring that into our body, and we can allow this energy to flow in ways that open us up, and that is incredibly profound and beautiful. And yeah, so I invite you every Friday, and to get more information you can go to pathwithharmony.com and there'll be a link in the description. Because also I just really quickly want to say how this Qigong relates to the summer solstice. Is Qigong, oftentimes we work with seen forces. For example, we work with the sunlight, solstice sunlight. We work with the moonlight. You work with the nature. You work with the earth. You work with the plants. You can exchange with the water, right? But then we also work with unseen forces. Unseen forces are like planetary alignments, our breath, vibration, universal love. And so we work with all these forces to harmonize and strengthen our bodies so that we can have ultimate health, right? Okay, and also another thing about the summer and our heart and Qigong is, like, our heart is a yin organ. It needs protection, right? It needs to be loved and listened to and cared for. Right now, everything's extreme yang, right? So this extreme yang is like too much for our heart. So we need to harmonize with it and protect it, right? It's too much. It's why we're feeling so broken and shattered and scared. It's too much. And so this practice tomorrow will really help you protect and love and nurture your heart. Okay? Okay. The next thing I really want to talk about is just the solstice has been so important to me my whole life, right? It's because my birthday's been right there, so it's always just been like Maria's born. It's the soul. And my birthday's on June 19th, which is Juneteenth, the day of like emancipation and liberation, right? And then it's the summer solstice, so it's always been just kind of like special. And so then once I started getting into like ceremonies and vision quests, every year I go in my mind or just in my yard and I do a vision. Okay, so who am I now? Where am I going? Where have I been? What am I committing to? And so I closed my eyes and I just really briefly, nothing really too intense about it, I just briefly closed my eyes and just imagine like, okay, where am I in the medicine wheel right now? Where am I in the medicine wheel? And like, boom, I'm right there on top of the mountain. I'm like, whoa, I made it to the top of the mountain. And I have this vision that I had was, I had all this like stuff on me, this bat on my back. And I was like carrying it. It felt heavy. So I made it to the top of the mountain, so like I took it off, like I took my backpack off. I took that thing off, right, that felt so heavy, and laid it up on the top of the mountain. And then when I looked down at it, it was feathers. How could a feather be so heavy? But my perception was just, and I set it down. But I made it to the top of the mountain, and I felt like so grateful, right? So grateful. Because the last time I did this, I was at the foot of the mountain and it was the winter and it was dark and it was cold and I was alone and I had to get to the top and I didn't know how I was going to do it. Now here I am, I'm at the top. And I don't have to carry the burden anymore, right? And so I'm at the top, I'm feeling grateful, and you can see all directions and I see beauty, and I ask my soul, okay, thank you for guiding me here. What's next? What do you want me to do now? Where do you want me to go? What's next? And so my soul is like, do you see that? And I'm like, this like distant, barely can see this mountain. My soul's like, I want you to climb that mountain. And I'm like, the more I look, it seems like the farther away it's getting, the less clear. And then I'm looking, and then I look down, and there's an ocean between me and the mountain I'm supposed to climb. And my first thought was like, what? You gotta be kidding. Like, I felt overwhelmed. I almost felt like all of a sudden I had a goal, and then like this great divide separated me from what I could possibly achieve, right? And then I'm like, so what about this mountain right here? Can I just hike this mountain? And my soul's like, well, yeah, sure, you can hike this mountain if you want to. I mean, what'll happen is you'll hike this mountain, you'll learn some lessons, you'll see beauty, you'll see beauty, and you'll also stay in a familiar place. And you'll stay in a familiar place, and you'll waste a bunch of time. Because if you're asking me what I want you to do, I'm wanting you to hike that mountain. And I'm like, okay. And then it hit me real heavy, right? It hit me real heavy. Is like, we're not on our spiritual path for our happiness and for our comfort and for our ease, right? We're on our path to awaken, to save our souls, really. Right? We're on our path to save our souls and humanity. It's not for our comfort. And it's actually a rather urgent matter. And it's of utmost importance. Right? And so it's clear to me now, like, that none of us can find our wholeness if we're not all whole. And we cannot and should not hastily rush and try to like somehow get over to that mountain and conquer that mountain. But it must be continuously acted upon, and it has to be the most important thing we do every day, is to follow our soul's impulse, right? To awaken. Because like I said, 25 years ago, I was the beginning of my meditation practice. That means, that was 25 years ago when I formally started my meditation, like with like monks, right? So that means not every day, but I have meditated almost every single day for 25 years. And I'm just now realizing that my to enlightenment and my path to awakening isn't about me and my happiness. I'm just now seeing it's not about me and my happiness. It's about us as a collective, right? And that vow, the Bodhisattva, that I felt like was impossible, and why in the world would somebody wait to achieve their own self-actualization when you got to wait for all these other people to do it? And they're not even practicing. I mean, what are they even doing, right? They're not doing anything that seems like, right? So that's my mind. And so then you realize the vow of Bodhisattva is not like optional, A or B. That's the path. If you're going to choose the path of enlightenment and choose the path of spiritual awakening, and if you're going to actually try to listen to your soul's calling, the vow of Bodhisattva is not like a good idea. It's what you do. It's the path. And I want to say that it's over and over, we cannot self-actualize alone. We have to do it together as a human consciousness, as a collective. In this my time of quarantine, you know how many times we like understand things like when you read them in a book, but then you understand them so much more in your body. Like we're all one, and the illusion of separation is a painful illusion. That is so true. That is a truth. And I want to also just say briefly is like when I look to that mountain and I look to that ocean and I feel overwhelmed, and then I take a step back and I get a perspective of like, once again, why I love my Qigong practice. When you put your perspective on the moon and you look down at the earth, you're like, it's all in the same little rock down there. It's not that big of a deal. Of course you can do it. Oh, okay. And then you look at that mountain and you start to think, okay, it's not, I don't have to worry about every single detail how I'm going to get there. I just have to know I will get there. I'll get to that mountain. And then when I rise and climb to the summit, to the top of that mountain, and when I look, guess what? There'll be another mountain, right? Another mountain to climb. But it's not so much about the mountain or even about the ocean. It's about falling in love. It's about falling in love with hiking mountains. It's about falling in love with the journey and with the process, right? And so that's what the solstice is about. Hearing your soul's call to fall in love, one step at a time, and climb the mountain, and trust the journey, and love the journey. So, happy birthday to me. Woohoo! Happy summer solstice to you. Happy Father's Day. Rest in peace, Dad. And a couple of things. Remember, you have commitments to make. So commit to your self-care and your self-practice. And class is Friday mornings at 10. You can have a free class when you go to pathwithharmony.com, and you can register for the class and you get a free class there. Also, the Alchemy Bath, Soothing Bath, the Solid and Serene, those links are down below. Get those, have those, let them be on your body, in your body. It's an act of self-care and self-love. Share this video with your friends, like and subscribe, and put in the comments in what ways the solstice has been illuminating things for you and what's been coming up for you, what things have been burning away, what things are being revealed. And until next time, my friends, drink deep and fall in love with hiking.